Take a deep breath. Hold it. Now let it out. Good job. You successfully performed respiration. Now, who are you going to thank for that sweet oxygen you just inhaled? Your mind probably goes straight to trees, right? You're picturing a lush green forest, maybe the Amazon, the so-called lungs of the earth. Well, you're wrong. Trees are great, but if you want to thank the real MVP of your respiratory system, you shouldn't be hugging a tree. You should be thanking a giant floating oceanic turd, specifically whale poop.
Yeah, you heard me. If sperm whales suddenly stopped pooping in the ocean, you, me, and every land-dwelling creature on this pale blue planet would eventually suffocate.
To understand why our survival is intrinsically linked to marine mammal bowel movements, we need to rethink where our oxygen comes from. We all learned in school that plants take in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. Yes, the Amazon rainforest produces a massive amount of oxygen, but here is the dirty little secret Big Tree doesn't want you to know. The rainforest uses almost all of that oxygen itself. The animals, the decomposing plants, the insects, they consume exactly what the trees produce. The net oxygen export of the Amazon is basically zero.
So where does your air come from? Look to the ocean, specifically phytoplankton. Phytoplankton are microscopic, single-celled organisms floating in the upper layers of the ocean. They are basically the grass of the sea and absolute photosynthesis machines. These tiny guys produce at least 50% of the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. Every second breath you take is brought to you courtesy of phytoplankton. They are the true lungs of the Earth.
But phytoplankton have a massive problem. To survive and pump out oxygen, they need two things. First, sunlight. That's easy enough. They hang out at the top of the ocean. Second, they need nutrients, specifically nitrogen, phosphorus, and most importantly for our story today, iron. This is where the design of the ocean feels like a terrible prank. The surface of the ocean is basically a biological desert. It is entirely depleted of iron. Why? Because iron is heavy. Any iron that finds its way into the ocean eventually sinks way down into the abyssal depths, thousands of feet below the surface. So the sunlight is at the top, but the fertilizer is at the bottom. The phytoplankton are trapped at the surface, starving for iron, looking down into the abyss like a kid staring at a candy bar dropped at the bottom of a well. Without iron, phytoplankton can't bloom and the oxygen factory shuts down. So how does iron get back up from the freezing, pitch-black bottom of the sea against the crushing force of gravity to the sunlit surface?
Enter the sperm whale. Sperm whales are one of the most ridiculous creatures evolution ever cooked up. They have a head shaped like a giant battering ram, teeth the size of energy drink cans, and they can hold their breath for over an hour. Why? Because they are commuting to work. A sperm whale's favorite meal is the giant squid, but giant squid don't hang out at the surface. They live in the midnight zones of the ocean, thousands of feet down. So the sperm whale takes a massive breath, dives deep into the abyss, and battles these terrifying tentacled monsters in complete darkness. Here is the crucial biological detail. Giant squid and other deep-sea creatures are loaded with iron. Their bodies are highly concentrated packets of bottom-dwelling nutrients. When the sperm whale eats the squid, it's basically swallowing a massive deep-sea iron supplement. But the whale has a problem. It can't digest all that iron. And, more importantly, it cannot poop under pressure. When you are 3,000 feet underwater, the hydrostatic pressure is crushing. It is hundreds of times greater than atmospheric pressure. If you are a whale, you do not want to open any bodily orifices at that depth unless you absolutely have to. Your sphincter is clamped shut with the force of a bank vault. So the whale eats its iron-rich squid dinner in the dark, holds it in, and begins the long journey back to the surface for a breath of fresh air. When the whale finally breaches the surface, a few things happen. It exhales. It takes in fresh oxygen. The massive pressure on its body is released. It relaxes. And then it lets it all go. I am talking about a biological explosion of epic proportions. A punami. A massive liquid cloud of fecal matter spreading across the surface of the ocean. Because marine mammals process their food differently, their feces isn't solid. It's a buoyant, flocculent liquid. It floats. It stays right there in the photic zone where the sunlight hits the water. Marine biologists have a technical scientific term for this phenomenon. They call it the whale pump. By feeding at the bottom and pooping at the top, whales actively pump millions of tons of trapped nutrients back to the surface against the force of gravity. This liquid whale poop is essentially Miracle-Gro for the ocean. It is a concentrated slurry of nitrogen, phosphorus, and a staggering amount of iron. In fact, sperm whale feces has about 10 million times more iron concentration than the surrounding seawater. The phytoplankton, who have been starving at the surface, suddenly find themselves swimming in a buffet of iron-rich fertilizer. They immediately consume it and start reproducing at a terrifying rate. This creates a massive phytoplankton bloom, a swirling green vortex of life so large it can literally be seen from space by satellites.
These microscopic plants feast on the whale poop, soak up the sun, pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and release billions of tons of fresh, life-giving oxygen back into the air. It is the most elegant, disgusting cycle in nature. Deep-sea iron goes into the squid. Squid goes into the whale. Whale brings it to the surface. Whale poops. Phytoplankton eat the poop. Phytoplankton make oxygen. You breathe the oxygen.
So what happens if you take the whales away? We actually ran that experiment and it almost killed us. During the peak of the industrial whaling era, humans slaughtered millions of whales. We hunted them for blubber, oil, and baleen. We decimated global whale populations, reducing some species by over 90%. And you know what happened? The oceans started dying. Without whales pumping iron back to the surface, phytoplankton starved. Without phytoplankton, the krill and small fish starved. The entire marine food web began to collapse. The surface of the ocean was turning back into a barren desert.
But the scariest part was the atmospheric impact. Less whales meant less poop meant less phytoplankton meant less oxygen being produced. And it gets worse, because phytoplankton don't just produce oxygen, they're one of Earth's greatest carbon sinks. When phytoplankton die naturally, they sink to the bottom of the ocean, taking the carbon dioxide they absorb from the atmosphere down with them, burying it in the deep sea for thousands of years.
By killing the whales, we weren't just turning off the Earth's oxygen supply. We were destroying the mechanism that keeps our climate stable. If we had hunted whales to complete extinction, the whale pump would have shut down forever. The surface oceans would have become stagnant, devoid of nutrients necessary to sustain plant life. Oxygen levels in the atmosphere would have slowly begun to drop. It wouldn't have been an overnight apocalypse like a bad sci-fi movie where everyone clutches their throats. It would have been a slow suffocation over centuries. Carbon dioxide levels would have skyrocketed, boiling the planet, while oxygen thinned out, making it harder for complex life to survive. Thankfully, we realized what we were doing. The international whaling bans of the 1980s helped pull these magnificent, pooping leviathans back from the brink of extinction. Their populations are slowly recovering, and as they do, they are restarting the great oceanic pump, fertilizing the seas and keeping our atmosphere breathable.
So the next time you step outside on a crisp morning, take a deep breath, and feel your lungs fill with oxygen, don't just stare at the trees. Look out toward the ocean. Salute the giant squid making the ultimate sacrifice, and give a quiet word of thanks to the majestic sperm whale for gracefully unleashing thousands of gallons of liquid crap into the sea so that you can live to see another day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next video. Let me know in the comments what other disgusting biological functions are secretly keeping you alive. See you next time.